Boker Tov, everyone, and welcome to our newest edition of 2022 or 5782, Ki Tisa. Now, I want to do an illustration for you right now, which I hope I can do in one take. Ready? A glass of water. Ah. All right. What just happened? Depends on the context. In the context of just a guy in a recording, nothing happened. He poured a glass of water over his head. In a Jewish context, it might mean, hey, be happy, it's Adar. It is the month of Purim, and doing silly and humiliating things is part of the Jewish experience. On the other hand, in another context, if this were done by a Roman Catholic priest while reciting the words, "In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, I baptize thee," my entire world would change. My status would change. I would, at least in the eyes of the Roman Catholic Church, cease to be a Jew and I would become a Christian. For a child, it means being changed from being a pagan to being a Roman Catholic Christian. So, why am I showing you this? Well, if you pay attention to the news, you might have noticed that there's a Catholic priest who's had to resign. How often does that happen? Not very often. He had to resign because for several thousand baptisms, he has used the wrong word. Instead of, "I baptize thee in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost," he says, "We baptize thee in the name of the Father and Son and the Holy Ghost." And that one word makes all the difference. As a result, there are thousands of young Roman Catholics running around over the past 25 years that he has supposedly baptized who are not, in fact, baptized. Now, that sounds ridiculous, no doubt. But it probably sounds ridiculous to you because when you took that anthropology class in college, you never read the seminal work by J.L. Austin, Doing Things with Words. This is a very important work that helps us understand ritual. Oh, here, let me put this back on top. There we go. Okay. So anyway, and what Austin illustrates for us is the fact that in human society, there are situations and circumstances where uttering certain words in a certain ritual context actually changes reality. And his specific example is a wedding, right? Now, exactly where the change in status happens is not completely clear. Maybe it's the moment when the husband puts the ring on the woman and says, "With this ring I thee wed." Or it could be when the priest himself declares, "I now pronounce thee man and wife." But the fact of the matter is, once that ritual is complete and those words have been uttered, the status of those two people is changed, right? It changes how other people perceive them. It changes how they file their tax accounts. It changes a whole bunch of things. And historically, among human beings, anthropologically, rituals make reality happen. It makes things change. And I'm sharing all of this with you, the story of the errant Catholic priest and the water and J.L. Austin to help illustrate our Torah portion for this week. Our Torah portion for this week is called Ki Tisa, and it's one of the most pivotal and seminal in the many pivotal and seminal Torah portions in the book of Exodus. It's pivotal and seminal, first of all, because we get the Ten Commandments. Now, the Ten Commandments have been recited for us before in Exodus 20, but we didn't really understand what was happening. There was actually a ritual, and that ritual happens in this week's portion, in which we learn that God not only gives the Ten Commandments, but he actually inscribes the Ten Commandments on 2 tablets. Now, just as an aside, we today illustrate the tablets of the Ten Commandments as if they were a tombstone. They're flat on the bottom, they're curved on the top. We actually inherited that iconography from Christianity. All previous evidence is they were just 2 square stones. Just want you to be aware of that. Anyway, according to our Torah portion this week, God inscribes the 10 Commandments on these 2 stones with, quote unquote, his finger. In other words, this is an object that is a hierophany. And a hierophany, in the terms of anthropology, is an object touched by God. And this is literally the case. God literally touched this. It means that's a really awesome object. So Moses then proceeds down the mountain with this really awesome object, actually 2 objects, 2 stones. And when he arrives on the scene, he discovers, lo and behold, to the horror of himself and God, the Israelites, in their panic that he has not returned and that they are left leaderless and without any sense of God's continuing presence, have taken it upon themselves, forgive me, get the right order there, taken it upon themselves to construct an image of God. And the image they use, though I think it's fairly clear they intend it to represent the God of Israel, is they use an Egyptian idol, that is the image of a bull, or as it says in the Hebrew Bible, probably meant to diminish the character, the symbol, a golden calf. This is the Egyptian god Apis, and it is a god of power. And so I think the Israelites were trying their best under these circumstances to construe how they should imagine the God of Israel. Of course, what they are not aware of is the fact that the 10 Commandments themselves contain a specific instruction not to make any image of God in any way, as called aniconism, to not imagine God. So they're in serious trouble here, all right? Not only have they violated the 2nd commandment, but they've committed an act of syncretism. Boy, there's a lot of anthropological words in this week's presentation. Syncretism is when you take 2 religions and you blend them together. And the use of the golden calf is an act of syncretism. They want to acknowledge the God of Israel, but they use Egyptian pantheon to do so. So, a lot of trouble. Then Moses, apparently in his anger, takes his tablet, our modern tablet, and he throws these tablets down and breaks them, which is a shocking act. He has taken a sacred object touched by God, and he has broken them. Now, there's a lot of speculation exactly what is he trying to say here. One is that it's an act of pure anger, that he's so furious with them, and in the subsequent events that happen, he will chastise everyone. A civil war will break out between the various factions of the Israelites, and then he will force them to go through a humiliating ritual, which is where we're getting, but I'm not there yet. So he smashes it. One interpretation is out of anger. Another interpretation, one that I have always loved, is that Moses, in his compassion for the people, smashes the tablets in order to give them plausible deniability. They didn't really sin because, after all, I hadn't yet given them your commandments, and therefore they can't be held accountable or culpable for it. Well, it's a great interpretation. I'm not sure it's accurate, since we've already been told in Exodus 20 that the Israelites heard the instructions, you shall have no other gods beside me, and you shall not make any graven images. Anyway, it's nice to think of Moses as a guy who cares. In any case, so what happens is, as I said, Moses confronts Aaron, his brother, who was a key player in the making of the golden calf. There then launches a struggle between the Israelites who engaged in this behavior and the Levites. That's Moses's tribe, and many people are killed. We sort of skim over that part. And then Moses does the most remarkable thing. He takes the golden calf, he smashes it. He doesn't just smash it, but he burns it. Now remember, this is probably a wooden object with gold and silver and jewels laid over it. So he burns the whole thing, it melts down into ash, and then, and this is the really weird part, Moses takes the ash and makes Israelites drink it in water. Hey, we're coming back to water, right? So he makes them drink it in water. So they literally drink their sin. They have to consume their crime. Now, that's really, really interesting. What is meant by that? What is the purpose of that? Well, there's probably two elements going on here. So I want you to remember the two elements of symbolism in this particular ritual. And in order to do that, for the first element, I want to go forward to the book of Numbers. All right. In the book of Numbers, we are told that there is a kind of ordeal. Now, an ordeal is a form of criminal procedure that we don't use anymore and is very rare even in Jewish law, but it does happen in this one case. And the ordeal is that if a woman is accused of adultery, she is required to drink earth from the sacred precincts of the tabernacle or the temple in which God's name has been inscribed. And that's scooped up and mixed into this horrible, muddy drink, the kind you would imagine a 2-year-old would give to an 18-month-old and say, drink this. And she would drink it. And then there would be consequences. Either she would abort a supposedly bastard fetus, or she would her uterus would prolapse or something like that. That would prove her guilt. Or if neither of those things happened, that would prove her innocence. Now, like I said, there's not really any other form of ordeal. If you're wondering what an ordeal is in Western context, remember things like witch trials or even dueling, trial by combat. Those are forms of ordeals. All right. So anyway, why am I telling you all of this? Because the first thing is making the Israelites who were guilty of the sin of the golden calf drink their sin is a kind of demonstration of their guilt, that they're willing to drink it. All right. Now, so it's analogous to the potentially cheating wife, and that's not incidental, which takes me to a Midrash. So I'm going all over the place here. I'm sorry, but in Judaism, there's no point A, point B, point C, point D. It's actually this wonderful network of ideas, a hyperlink of ideas. All right. So there's a wonderful Midrash that asks the question you and I have never asked, which is, why is it that the Ten Commandments are written on 2 tablets rather than 1 tablet? And the Midrash answers the question, well, if you look at them, you will see everything on this tablet refers to God. Everything on this tablet refers to your relationships with other people. And in fact, if you went horizontally from one to the other, you would see that they actually correspond, that there is a relationship between the commandment regarding God and the commandment regarding people. So, one commandment says on this stone, you shall not have any other God beside me. And on this stone it says, you shall not commit adultery. So, what the Ten Commandments are doing, according to the rabbis, are actually teaching us that to cheat on God is analogous to cheating on your husband or wife, and vice versa. To cheat on your husband, wife is analogous to cheating on the ultimate. It's a terrible, terrible offense. So, as a result, the drinking of the burnt idol is meant to resemble the drinking of the name of God in the trial of the wife accused of infidelity. Get it? All right. So it's not quite the same thing because it simply boils down to this. And boiling is, of course, an analogy for water, but no one boiled this. The analogy is it's not that they're being put through an ordeal in the traditional sense. I'm sure drinking molten gold and dirt is pretty much an ordeal no matter what the situation is. In any case, it's not an ordeal so much as it is an admission of guilt. So to perform this ritual is to admit, yes, I did wrong. I lacked fidelity to God, and I failed to honor God. And in the same way, might say I failed to honor my husband or my wife, and it's an acknowledgement of that. So the symbolism is quite powerful. The second thing is it's really quite a diss on the idol itself, right? Because you're drinking the idol, and eventually you're going to, pardon my Hebrew, shit it out. So it is a intentional denigration of the object that only moments ago the Israelites were worshiping. So it's a pretty potent message all round. Now, this has a great deal of power in the ancient world because I just explained to you how doing rituals and saying things in a certain context change status. And in this particular case, this changes the status of the guilty Israelites to forgiven. If they drink, they receive forgiveness, and the sin is wiped away. Now, why am I telling you this? How can we get something out of this strange ritual moment that takes us beyond simply our scratching our heads about the priest who has to resign because he forgot to use one word versus another? Look at what it's reminding us is that asking forgiveness, acknowledging we did something wrong, is one of the most difficult things for us to do in our human interactions. We still have a sense of this being consuming our pride, right? When we do this, we speak of eating crow or eating my hat. These are metaphors to remind us of how unpleasant it is to have to admit we got it wrong, we did it wrong, we said it wrong, and take the hit for it. All right. Now, that brings me to Yom Kippur. All right. Everybody is really puzzled at times about the aspects of confession in Yom Kippur. We confess together. We confess in public. We often confess to things that we are not personally responsible for. And that bothers some people. But maybe we should think of it this way, that our asking for forgiveness on Yom Kippur is not the key moment. It's a rehearsal. It's a going through the practice session for the next 364 days of the year. Because what Yom Kippur comes to teach us is that we need to do a personal accounting each and every day. And when we get it wrong, we need to acknowledge it and we need to apologize for it. A very hard thing to do. But if we learn and we internalize from Yom Kippur that I can do this. I can stand up in the presence of other people and say these things. I can admit to my error. I can even admit to my error, even if I personally don't think I did anything wrong. Then we are prepared for the next 364 days to make our relationships better and to make the world work better because we're willing to accept the humiliation, the pain, and the lowering of status that happens when we say, oh, I did this and it was the wrong thing. Will you forgive me? So, in a roundabout way, I bring us back to contemporary Judaism. Uh, be careful what you say, especially in particular contexts. But just as important, remember that sometimes you just have to eat some crow and acknowledge in front of everybody else that you harmed, that you did something wrong, and move. And that is the mechanism by which we can move on, just as it was the mechanism for the ancient Israelites to move on from the sin of the golden calf. Well, that's my presentation for today. I'm just going to dry off here a little bit, and I hope you all have a great week, and we'll see you on Shabbat.